In this lesson, I'll be showing you how to create a macros to remove duplicates from a list. I'll be taking you through it step by step and explaining all the necessary formulas needed as well as the approach to creating the code. Therefore, no previous knowledge is required. Here at ESS, we believe in learning by doing. Therefore, go ahead and pause this video, download the practice workbook in the link in the description, and when you're ready, let's go ahead and get started. So once you've opened the practice workbook, you will see the following in front of you. For some of you, you might have a yellow ribbon at the top that indicates you need to enable macros. You go ahead and click that. In my case, it's not showing because the program has already activated it. So don't be worried if it's not there. So the next step is just to explain the worksheets underneath. I've created two, the one called list to be cleaned. This is the one that we'll always use going forward if you need to clean a list. And then for this lesson, obviously we need a list to work with. So I've created a second one with some dummy emails to filter through and actually remove the duplicates. If you have your own list, you can go ahead and use that. If not, let's go ahead and use this list. So to get started, I need to select developer menu bar, but now you'll notice that the developer menu is not there. So I need to go to File, click on Options, Customize Ribbon. Then on the right side, you'll notice that Developer is unchecked. Let's check that. Press OK. And now we have Developer at the top. Once I select that, you have all your options within the ribbon of the developer. We will be going to Visual Basic, as that takes us to the Visual Basic editor. I'll click on that. And now this is where we will do our coding. As a beginner, don't be concerned, I will take you through step by step to explain how we start and where we finish. There are three phases I'll be taking you through. Phase 1 being the basic structure and logic to solving our problem in removing duplicates. Phase 2 and 3 being an improvement in the logic so we can remove some errors as well as improve the way that the coding has to follow our instructions step by step. Phase 1. Here we will need a module to be putting our step-by-step coding inside of. So what we'll do is we'll click on the name of the file we're working in, then select Insert in the menu bar and click Module. You'll notice that Module 1 has been created. We'll select that and then click on the right-hand side. In this page side, we will be typing our step-by-step macros. So to start that, we always open it by calling it sub space and then give it a name. Any name, creative name, as long as there are no spaces inside of it. I will be calling it duplicate removal, open parentheses, close parentheses, enter. And this is the standardized basic approach to creating your first macros. You'll notice that end sub immediately opened up below it. That is just to show that whatever you type between these two lines will be the actual step-by-step that the program must follow. So let's just visually make it more appealing. We'll press some enter a few times just to open space. And as a default approach, I always type Option Explicit. So I press enter to bring sub down. Then I type Option Explicit at the top. And that is to make sure that whatever variables I'll be using in my coding, variables is something to accommodate dynamicness. I will then always be told this has not been classified, because our variables can be classified as a number or as text, and this is very helpful for the program. So here I'll just be making a note to myself that under this part, I'll put apostrophe and type the word variable. Plural, variables. Enter. You'll notice that it's turned green. So for the program, it will ignore that line because it will say, I deem this just as note text, so it's not part of the program to be followed. This is for user purposes or for any other, if you want to leave notes to yourself in the future, or even for the next programmer that might use your file. So the first step we do is, now that we've got our structure in place, we need to look at saying, what is it that we want our program to do? We want it to remove duplicates. But you have to think about the computer. What must it do? When must it do it? If I look at my file, which is the list to be cleaned, I'll notice that it has nothing inside of it. So the computer first has to determine, is there something in here or not? So that's a criteria check, right? So the criteria check will be, is there a list to be analyzed? Going back, I will then say I need to create some criteria to be checked. And then once your criteria has been checked, if it is, yes, there is a list to be analyzed, what does it need to do? Well, then I need to say that do the action. So the note I leave to myself is perform duplicate removal. Right? However, if it is not present, if there's no list to do, what do I tell myself then? I say, well, the computer can't continue with it. It needs to stop doing what it's doing. So then in that case, I'm going to say stop the process. Now that I've at least got a step-by-step approach, I will now start to think of what is it that I'm going to put there for the computer to do, because this is just notes to me. Computer right now, if I press run program, it's going to say nothing will be done. So let's start. In criteria, if I have to look at my list again, I will go to data to be analyzed, and I'm going to copy the list, put it in list to be cleaned, paste it. So the computer needs to know, is there a list to analyze? How does the computer know it? There's different ways of trying to tell him what to do, but I prefer using the last row approach. So last row means that the computer checks what is the last row number that has been entered into. If it is that nothing has been entered into, the last row should be row 1. And if it is row 1, it implies that there is nothing in the list. If it is more than row 1, if I get an answer of 2, 3, 4, whatever the number is after 1, there is obviously a list to analyze. Now, knowing that, I'm going to use the last row formula that I'll be showing you in macros how to type. Go back, and we'll click on criteria. So I will say last row equals. Now, how this code works is that it will go from the bottom, right at the bottom of this list, being the last row being a very big number at the end, obviously. If I go down like this, you'll notice that it's like 1 million and something. And it will then go up trying to find what is the last row that has something inside of it. Right now, all of this is blank, so it ignores blanks. And it will go all the way up to the top, and it should end at 26, because it will pick up and say, oh, there is a row that has something inside of it. So that should be my last row with detail, with an entry inside of it. Then how do I put this into the function? I will type last row equal sheet. Which sheet do I need to work in? I need to work in sheet 2 dot, and then the range is the cell that I need to start from. So I'll open parentheses, close parentheses, dot again. And as I explained, I need to go from the bottom up. So I'll type in end, open parentheses, and start from the bottom and go up. That's just telling it which direction to move. Close parentheses. And since in this case, if I leave it as such, it will go up all the way, find the last row that has an entry, and it will give me that cell's reference. I don't want the reference. I want to know what the actual row number is. So I will say dot row, enter. But now the formula is almost complete. There's just something missing, the range, because obviously there are many columns. So which cell am I really going to start looking from? And I need to go back and say that this is column A, and I can choose any number from where you need to start. So if I say start from A15, it will then actually stop immediately, because it will say I picked up on something. Obviously we don't want to do that. We want to look at the entire list. So we could either choose the right at the bottom, or if we know our list will never be more than 1,000, we can say start at 1,000. In my case, I'm not going to choose the last one because that number is big. So since I know my list is quite small, I'll be going back and indicating in between the parentheses, open double quotation, column A, and start at 1,000, and close double quotation. So now that I've indicated that, once it's run this, it will give me a row number. In this case, it should give me row 26. But now that the computer knows row 26, what's it going to do with that? Because like I said before, row 1, I know that there's nothing in it. Row 26, there is something in it. So now we can actually create an if statement. That is the criteria. So we type in if last row, which is the variable in this case, if last row equals 1, then, and press enter, what should it do? In my case, I want the process to stop if there's nothing in the list. So then I will say exit sub. Since this is a subroutine and the subroutine is called sub, exit the sub, which means that everything is done at the top, it will stop doing and stop the whole process. Enter. And that's all we want to do. We want to say, if you get there, stop it. So end the if statement. And that's our structure. But the lovely thing about just writing in this format is that if it gets there and it finds out that last row is not 1, it will jump the entire part and therefore go to the next process. So the stop process actually goes inside of the if statement. If last row equals 1, then exit sub, which is the stop process. If it doesn't, it will just ignore this and go to the next step, which is perform our duplicate removal. Oh, I noticed that I've done a typo, so let me just change that. Duplicate. Okay, so far we're doing quite well. We've got, when I run this program, it goes nothing in variables yet. It does a last row check. Then it checks that it's not equal to 1. It ignores that and goes to the next. So what is our removal function? We will type in range, open parentheses, close parentheses, dot, remove, and then you'll notice that remove duplicates exist as a function. Double click on that. Space. We want to remove duplicates within one column. So we type in columns, colon equal to one column, comma, space, header. When we do select our range, it will include a header. So we tell it that yes, it will have one. So you can ignore that. So it's colon equal to, and we select Excel yes. Press enter. And now we have everything in place. Now we only have to identify our range. Now, since we know that in our list, if we go back there, it is from A1 down to A26. So I'm going to start off with that just to get the structure in place. So it is double quotations, A1, colon, A, and then it's 26, and close double quotations. But now, as I've said before, we are going to check what the last row is anyway, and this will always be dynamic. So if you look at the range that you've just identified, the part that will always change is the 26. The row number will always be linked to what the last row is of an entry. And that is the part that we can make dynamic. By selecting 26, delete that, and then next to the double quotations, we press space, put in the ampersand symbol, or the and symbol as some people know it, space again, and then put in the variable name called last row. Once we have that, we have just made our function dynamic because it will go through the last row, it will identify it as being 26, it will go through the check saying that, okay, it's not equal to 1, so ignore that, and then it will say range A1 to A26 and remove the duplicates, and then we should get our result. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put this to the test now. First of all, let's just save that. And then go ahead and look. Okay, so we know that this will go through our list. The only thing we need to make sure now is, will it work? Now you can go ahead and press play. Not the best approach because there could be errors popping up. You can do a step-by-step where it goes through each line and it actually highlights to you as it goes through each line. And that's a good approach. We do that by either pressing F8 or going to the debug in the menu and selecting step into. So what I'll do is I'll press F8. And it immediately shows me, I cannot start this macros because you have not identified a variable. You've not classified it. And that was the point of Option Explicit. So press OK. I'll go back to variables. I'll say OK. dim is what we always start with identifying a variable. So our dim last row, what type of variable is it? You can either just leave it as such, or you say as an integer. Integer is to refer to, it's a number that can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with no decimal. If you wanted to use something that has a decimal result, you would use the word double. And if you wanted to use something that has letters in it, you would say string. So I say dim last row as integer, press enter. Now that has been classified. Let us press F8 again. And it starts working through it. So it's checked it. And now it will go through last row. And it immediately tells me, if you highlight with your mouse, last row equals 26. That's a good start. If last row equals 1, then stop the process. You see, it jumped it because it wasn't equal to 1. Goes to the next part, range A1 to A26, and we do F8 again, and it's gone to end sub. And that is a good sign because no errors have been picked up, but has something happened? Let us go to the final page. And we'll notice that the 26 has gone down to 13. So all duplicates have been removed, which is a great result because now you know that your actual function has worked. But you'll notice that in this case, the thing is you had a list here and now it's clean, but you don't have a reference. It's not always an easy thing to work with. So this is where we can go to our next phase, phase 2, to improve this coding a little bit, the logic, to say, well, I would like to actually keep the original list that I've placed here and maybe give me a new worksheet that has the result of the 13. And with that, let's start phase 2. Here we need to add in the step to create a worksheet, copy that information that is on our list to be cleaned over to the new worksheet, and then give us the result of the duplicate removal. And that way we still keep the original list within the first worksheet. And that step would come, if you look at the step-by-step, first check if there is a list, then stop it if there's not, and if there is, then do it. So right between that, we would then add a new step to say, if it is that there is a list, create a new worksheet. And you'll notice I put in the apostrophe, so it's only for our comment, for our notes. And then when you have created the new worksheet, also give it a name, and rename it. So once it's done that step, then afterwards I would actually like to copy the list to this new worksheet. So now I'll be saying, okay, copy the list to the new worksheet. And then once the worksheet has been entered with the copy, please go ahead and remove the duplicates. But in this case, we need to be specific to which list, because now we will have two worksheets with the same list. Now that we've got that step by step, I would like to first do the worksheet part. To create a worksheet, we will type Sheets.Add, then open parentheses, and then you'll notice you have the option of before or after. Because what this will do is it will ask you, where do you also want to place this new worksheet? It's an option. So we have, if you look on the left, sheet 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 sheets. So we would say add after. So it's at the end. And then we'll do colon equal to. And after what? We'll say after sheets, open parentheses, after sheets 4, close parentheses, and then close it again. So now we know Sheets.Add after sheets 4. But when you have created the new worksheet after sheets 4, why don't you go ahead and change the name as well? So we say dot name equal to, so what do you want to name it? And this is where we put this between double quotations. So we put this, and I'll name it list underscore cleaned, because a name of a worksheet, it's just good to not have spaces. Not, you can have it, but preferably always to have it as one word. Close double quotations, enter. And now we have the instruction to create a new worksheet, and that worksheet will be called list cleaned. But the problem I have for it being dynamic is that we will always have a case of it could be this workbook or another workbook where your amount of sheets will not always be 4, so it will always be placed after the 4th sheet. I prefer having the option where it will always put it at the end. So the 4, I will tell it to say, please count how many worksheets you have in your workbook and then place it after that. And how you tell it to count, it is to say Sheets.Count. And that's the only part you do. So now you know that if you're going to add a sheet, please count the sheet and place after and name it list cleaned. So we have now made a successful creation of worksheet. And now we need to copy the information from our list to be cleaned to our new worksheet. How we go about this is a very simple approach that I prefer using. You know, you don't always know all the copying functionalities. So how we do is we let the computer do it for us. And this is where I will show you to record a macros as well as to use what it has recorded. So we will go to our spreadsheet. Now you'll remember that was our result from phase 1. Let's just correct that by going back to data to be analyzed. Copy the original list back to list to be cleaned. Control V. We've got the list. And now I'd like to add in, we have to think about where we are in the steps. We have to have a new worksheet. So I'll right click underneath and say insert worksheet. Okay. Now we have this new worksheet. Doesn't really matter where it is. I'll just move it to the right. And then we have to go back to list to be clean. Now the steps we want to follow is that once the worksheet has been created, please go and select all of that, copy it, and then go to Sheets 2 and paste it. That is the macros that we need to perform so that it records it, and then we can use that code. Okay, so let us either at the bottom left, you can click on that to start a recording, or go to developer and click record macros. It will give you a name, doesn't matter, you can press OK, and now it's starting to record when you see the square at the bottom left. Now that I'm in this worksheet, I'll go and click A2, select everything down to A26, right click, copy, then I'll go to sheet 6, A1, I'll right click and click paste. It has pasted the list, which is very important. Now we can go ahead and stop the macros. We can go back to our VBA editor. And now you'll notice on the left, we had module 1 for our code and module 2 was just created by the recording. Double click on module 2. And now we have these steps. It has selected a range. Then it has gone and copied the range. Then it has selected the new cell in the new worksheet. And it has pasted it. How we can do this for us is the following. We take that entire part, Control C, we go back to module 1, and under copy list to new worksheet, I will paste that. We can backspace just to move them nicely back into our format, and then start to clean it up. So once this has created a new worksheet, it will be at the stage in that new worksheet. We would like to go back to the worksheet that has the actual list. So what I would say is go to Sheets. And what is the Sheets number? It is Sheets 2, that is list to be cleaned. And then I would say select. Now that it has selected the worksheet, now I will say select the range of cells, which is A2 up to A26. But remember, 26 is dynamic. It will always change. So we will remove 26 and we'll add the ampersand symbol and say last row. In that way, it accommodates any longer list in the future. So please go ahead and select A2 all the way to the last row and then copy it. Once it's copied, go to the new worksheet. Now this obviously is not the new worksheet. We need to change it to the one we've just created at the top called list clean. So what we would do is between sheet 6 and the double quotations, we change that name to list_cleaned. So now we know that once you've copied, go to Sheets, List Cleaned, select it, and then once it's selected, it's considered the active sheet, and then it will be pasted in there. Now we're on the right track. It has now been put into the new worksheet, and that's what we wanted. Now that we've done with that, we can go to the next step and saying, well, once you are there, please go ahead and remove the duplicates. So within there, just as a backup, it's not really needed because technically speaking, we've already gone there to paste it, but I just like to always be sure. So I would say, go to Sheets, open parentheses, double quotations, list underscore cleaned, double quotation, close parentheses, dot select. Now that it has selected that, it will go into the range and remove the duplicates. But now you just need to remember, in this case, when we have pasted it into our new worksheet, it doesn't have a heading, which is a very important factor here. So let's go back to the coding and we'll say from A1, please go down to, oh, but last row was applicable to another worksheet. It wasn't applicable to this worksheet. So we need to actually do that rule again, where we say, okay, wait, we need to actually add in a new last row. And the last row would be last row underscore new, just giving it a new name, equals to sheets, what do we call it? List underscore cleaned, double quotation, close parentheses, dot range, open, double quotation, and we give the range starting from way below, maybe A1000, double quotation, close parentheses, dot, end, open, Excel up, and dot row. Just remember, if you've forgotten anything about here, you can just go back and listen to when I explained how to create the formula up there. So now that it's actually created the copy and it's gone to the new worksheet, it will just make sure that we are still standing at a good situation with where our row number is, because technically the row number would have changed because we don't have a heading now, a header. So therefore the last new row will be the last entry for the list to be analyzed and duplicates removed. So with range, we will change that to last row underscore new. And just to show you, if you go back to our spreadsheet, you'd see list to be clean goes to row 26, whereas within the new worksheet, you go to row 25. Now there are other methods to go about this, but I just want to be making it clear. That's why I'm using the formulas that I am, to make no mistakes. So now we have to check again, have we got everything in place? And now we can go ahead and press F8. We just created a new variable, so let's go and identify, classify that under variable. So it is last row underscore new. See, I almost forgot, dim, last row new as integer. So I can press F8 again. There we go, it's moving. Last row was 26. Yes, so you can go ahead and move to the next step. Sheets.Add. No error popped up, so it's created the new worksheet. Sheets 2 is selected. It has now selected the range. Now it's copying it. It's going back to the new worksheet. It is making it active and pasting that result. And now I'm making sure that I'm still in that worksheet, checking the new last row, and you see last row is now 25, and therefore please remove the duplicates, and it has gone through. If we go and check the worksheet, we have got our result. So now you notice list clean has been created as we requested. List to be clean is still the original list, and now you have the two to refer to. Just for the sake, we can delete sheet 6 now, because that was just to help with the coding in the beginning. So I'll delete that. And now we have as needed. So well done, phase 2 complete. Now we need to go to phase 3 because now we have to consider a situation that could occur. Let's say I want to test this again. Everything's the same, nothing has changed. Let's go back to the code and I want to run it again. Now let's say F8. And it's running, all process as new. I just got an error when it got to Sheets.Add. And I wonder why is that? For the obvious reason that this name already exists. And if a name already exists, the computer cannot override that. There is no default setting for it to be overridden. Therefore, if I go back, you see it's created a new worksheet, but it was unable to rename it to list clean because that list already exists. This is an error that we need to fix, and therefore we will do this in phase 3. So to fix phase 3, let us delete sheet 8. And let's keep list cleaned, and we'll go back to our VBA editor. We can stop the code from running again. And now we need to consider a situation that because you will always run this more than once and you won't always remember to delete that worksheet, the computer needs to do that for you. So every time you run it, a good approach would be, please go through the process of checking there's a list. Yes, it is. And then create a new worksheet. But before you create the new worksheet with the name I require, just go ahead and check if there's a worksheet that has that name already. And if it does, please delete it and then create a new one. And once that is done, please continue doing the rest as is. So having explained that approach, let's put that step in the right position. It will be after having checked if there is a list, then we will place the step of another criteria check, which is criteria check for existing worksheet. If present, delete. For this to be performed by the program, we need to go to the worksheet and actually look through each one and say, worksheet name, is it equal to list cleaned? Yes or no? If it's no, move to the next one. If it's no, move to the next one, and so forth, till it gets through all the worksheets within one workbook. And how we do that is by using two operators, which is a for operator and an if operator. And this is how we explain it. We'll first type for each worksheet. Now I'll do a shorthand which we'll call WS. For each worksheet in this workbook dot worksheets. So now it's going to look through a worksheet in this workbook every time. I need you to do that. So it's like a loop, go through each one. And inside, when you're looking at one worksheet, what do you need to do? You need to do a condition, a criteria, like we did with the if for if there's a list existing. Now I'll just make a space to show a difference. If the worksheet dot name equals list underscore cleaned, double quotations. Just make sure that the spelling is exactly with capital being cleaned. See, I almost forgot typing. Then, so if the worksheet name, so when I go to the first worksheet and I get its name, if the worksheet name is equal to list clean, what do I need to do? Double spacing, ws dot delete. So I'm telling it, if it is equal to that name, delete it. And then I would say end if, because that's the only action I wanted to perform if it's true. If it's not, please go to the next worksheet. So it's next ws. So what I said was, for each worksheet in this workbook, check the name. So worksheet 1, is it equal to that name? No, then jump over. Worksheet 2, is it that name? No, jump over, and so forth till it finds it. If it doesn't find it, it means it never needed to delete it because it never existed. And in that process, we have just made sure that we will not have the error of adding a worksheet with the name being the same. and how to test if this works. If you remember, go back to the spreadsheet. We already have the old one existing that has been cleaned up. So I will now place this next to the VBA editor and see as we go through the code what happens to the worksheets on the left. As we can see all of them there, I'll click on the code itself, then I will start to type F8. Oh, we have not identified a variable, which I believe is the worksheet one. You'll see WS. So now we have to say under variables, dim WS as worksheet. Now it knows that we're referring to worksheets. And I can press F8 again, goes through, does the necessary check. Now it's going to check the worksheet. Let's see what it says. WS is currently nothing. If I press F8 again, it is going through. The name is lesson content, which is the first one. Goes through the second one, list to be cleaned. See, it jumps it. Goes to the third one, jumps it again. Goes to the fourth one, goes to the next one, and we see list cleaned. This might be true. Let's see if it goes to delete. It does. So therefore it will now delete the list clean. It tells you that it will permanently delete this. So you click yes, delete. Goes to the next worksheet, goes on, and it does the next steps as per normal phase 2. But now something I just picked up now, which was not great, is that you got a question in between the process and you might not even know where it comes from. You see the list clean has been created. And to prevent that notification from popping up and saying, do you want to do this action? Because you might not even know what it was really doing. We have to actually put in an extra process at the top. And where we put that is right here under the sub duplicate removal. We will type application dot display alerts, which is what we experienced during the process. And in the beginning we'll say, look, put that functionality off. And then at the end, when everything has been completed, please put it back on, because that is your normal state, your default state. So application right at the bottom dot display alerts equals true. Now we've done that, we don't expect that question to come up again about the worksheet, so let's go ahead and test it. F8, and we're running through. It's doing the worksheet find and delete if present, so it's going through the list. It has found it, it's going to delete. Now we last time experienced the notification or the alert. Let's see if it pops up now. No, it doesn't. We've achieved our goal. And now it moves on to the next steps. And we have our result. Let's just add this macros to a button so that it's easy for you to use on future lists that need to be removed. So we can just make this worksheet a bit bigger. I would recommend to put it in list to be cleaned. And we can put it in the first row. Let's just make that a bit bigger. Then we can say insert shape, and we can add any shape. And this shape we can link to a macros. That would be the first option. The second option could be go to developer and insert, and there you can insert an actual VBA button, and then you just have to select the actual macros. We choose duplicate removal, and then this is this usual standard button look. So not really creative or very colorful. So it's better to maybe work with a shape. Here you can just give it a name. So we say remove duplicates. And then you can right click on it and say assign macro. And then you choose duplicate removal. And both of them are performing the same function. On button 1, you can right click and say edit text. And there you can also change the name if you wanted to. So both perform the same. You can change the shape to its colors, but you believe that's easy to work around. So there you can just select it, go to shape format and choose your colors and your text, etc. So just to see that it works, press it and the result is there. As a thank you for sticking around till the end, go ahead and press Ctrl, Shift and T, and you will receive the code that has been taught during this entire lesson. It is an easy referencing page for you to use for future macros projects, and also just for you to make sure that you haven't made any mistakes as you were following. Thank you again, and I hope you learned by doing.